As a council member, you have a responsibility to watch how taxpayers and ratepayers' money is spent. How would you safeguard public funds?
We need to initially stop with the closed door sessions, closed door meetings, closed door special sessions, those things that kind of happen behind closed doors and decisions that result from this. That was a big thing that kind of came out. Former manager Connie Green a number of years ago was there were issues that happened in the city. There's no accountability. There's no one to really kind of point the finger at. But the guy that they did lay it all on ended up with a $750,000 bailout because of it. And the response from most of the council members at the time was, well, this is in the best interest of the city. Well, was it? Because we could very easily have gone after them financially, maybe for some of that money, if they're making those types of decisions. Transparency is the first step to accountability and to maintaining taxpayer spending.
What experience do you have in financial management, and how will you use that experience on the council?
Well, I kind of got a problem with the fundamentals of the question. We're not managing the New York Stock Exchange here. We're not the SEC trying to monitor, tens of thousands of transactions every minute, trying to figure out, who might be trying to manipulate the system. Effectively, we're balancing a very complex checkbook, but it is still a checkbook. Are we making enough money to meet our expenditures, and vice versa and stuff. Now, we do have things like pension plans that we need to be taking a very hard look at, but that's why we hire city managers, for $250,000 a year, and they need to be up on that type of thing. What we need to make sure is that at the end of the day, is that money in equals money going out. And hopefully, in this case, we start replacing some of our fund balances that we've been overexpending, for the last 6 to 8 years.
Assuming you have no additional money, what is your plan to attack Killeen's violent crime concerns?
Well, no extra money, we can't put more cops, we can't put more programs in place, we can't equip those police officers a little better, introduce new systems and stuff. So, with no extra money, we really kind of go back to basics. And the easiest way that I can think of to reduce crime in this city is you have to make it an environment that criminals don't like to be in. What I would like to see done, and this is a combination, I'll explain what has to be coordinated towards the end of the answer there. But what has to be done is that if you are a repeat offender, so if you have a felony on your record, say it's for aggravated robbery, 10 years ago, and you blow a stop sign, and you get pulled over for running that stop sign, and when the police officer doing the quick check on your ID says, "Hey, you got a felony in your background, you blew a stop sign, I cannot be lenient with you. I have to write you a ticket. Regardless of circumstances, I am forced to write you a ticket by city policy." And when you go to court, to the JP or any of the other judges in the area, and say, "Hey, I got a ticket for running the stop sign, I do have a record," that judge is not lenient with you. He maxes you out on the fine, and you have to pay that fine. So if you're a criminal in the city who has a record, or a criminal has a record, but if you're somebody in the city that has a record, don't run stop signs, use turn signals, go the speed limit, and don't commit repeat felonies. The problem we have in the city is criminals think it's okay to act out in little ways, which we don't have the law enforcement budget to cover all our areas anyways, because we are expanding a little faster than what we are. And our new police station is 10 to 12 miles from the not just the population center, but from the crime center of the city. We have to make it a place where criminals do not feel comfortable. Now, if you're a first-time offender, meaning you don't have a record, you run a stop sign, let the police officers, let the judiciary, let everybody, let the system handle itself. But if you're a repeat offender, if you have a crime on your record, you need to toe the line. And if you're running stop signs, if you're jaywalking, if you're throwing trash out your window, or if you're robbing other convenience stores, you're going to be held accountable. We do not want you here. There's a large racial component to this, and it's a very sad thing. But most of the crimes committed in the city are in the areas with a high propensity for minorities, blacks and Hispanics. We are not doing our best as a community to protect these environments. And they're already a lot up against them. The school system, you got a lot of other problems with, and helping these kids get on their feet and get an education so they get good jobs. And that'll dovetail later on with the business climate stuff. But we should not be tolerant of crime to any degree in this city. We need to have a reputation that if you're a criminal, you stay out of Killeen, Texas. And I think that without any additional expenditures, if we simply tell our police officers and ask our judges, which you have to ask judges are elected officials too, so you can't enforce policy on them, but tell your police officers and ask your judges to enact a policy of no tolerance for repeat offenses, we will develop that reputation, and criminals will not stay inside the city limits of the Killeen.
What are your top 3 priorities and how will you accomplish them?
Well, top 3 priorities, not necessarily in this order, but in an order that kind of builds upon itself here. Crime. We kind of talked about what we need to deal with there. We need to empower police officers to get out there and enforce it. Councilman Johnson, Gregory Johnson, had a kind of some neat ideas about how to interact with the community and stuff like that, and that's great. But one strategy is one thing, and kind of like a good councilman, bad councilman kind of concept is, yeah, you want to be friendly, you want to get the communities to interact, but at the same time, you got to let them know that we're not going to deal with repeat offenders. We're going to be hard on these guys, and we're going to come down on them, guys and gals, whatever. But even people coming from outside the area into Killeen, if they live in Belton and want to come and commit a crime in Killeen or Copper's Cove and come here, they're going to forego it. They're going to stay on 190 and keep on driving. They're not going to stop here. And then community projects directly relating to similar to what Councilman Johnson has suggested, interacting, getting some idea where the crimes are committed, what crimes are committed, and getting police officers to heavily invest themselves in those areas in order to deter that. So that dovetail into number 2, which is the business climate. You're not going to attract businesses if you have a high crime rate. That's one of the first things a business is going to look at. But Texas is bringing in dozens, if not hundreds, of businesses every month into the state of Texas because of the business climate. You go to Austin, Texas. There are tech companies from all over California and New York that are moving to Austin, Texas. Why Austin, Texas? Well, because Austin does its best to reach out to those companies and say, hey, listen, guys, we are here to take advantage of the Texas business model. And our standard of living is 60% of what it is in California or New York. Why don't you come here? We have housing, we have amenities, we have recreation, we have all these great things. Well, why are we not doing that here in Killeen, Texas? Because our standard of living, our cost of living, is 60% of what it is in Austin. So we have housing available. I mean, if you look at the real estate, there's housing available, and we're building more houses too. And that's kind of a separate issue there. But we're also dumping. I say dumping in a semantic way, but hundreds of people from Fort Hood, they're leaving the Army. They're coming onto the streets of Killeen. They're like, well, hey, I can't stay here. I still have raise a family, so I can't go to Walmart or fast food. Even if I got a medical or a retirement pension, I've got to move on. Well, we have an educated workforce. We have an experienced workforce. We have a veteran workforce, and that's something that these companies can use. And one of the premier things we need to be advertising to these companies is, hey, if you come here and you work in Killeen, not only do you have all these other benefits like housing and in the area and so forth, and the lower cost of living for your employees, but you don't have to pay for their health insurance. Almost everybody here in Killeen, especially out of the military, they have VA insurance. So you are not going to have to be paying that level of cost or incur that cost if you move here and hire these people that live inside the city of Killeen. And we want you to come here. But we got to reach out to them. We have to go and tell them the advantages of what we offer. And think outside the box. It's not just the normal things. Austin can't provide that. We have a lower cost of living. We can make it cheaper for you to hire people and cheaper to maintain those employees. And why are we not out there telling these guys? But I don't need the one doing that. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as taxpayers to the Killeen Economic Development Commission, Chamber of Commerce, Heart of Texas Defense Alliance, and probably several others. Hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to each of these organizations, and they're not doing their jobs. Yet, when it comes down budget time, the only thing we're really effectively doing is making excuses for them. We're saying, hey, you know what, good try, here's your budget for next year, hopefully you do better. That's a problem. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, which could be devoted towards the police department, the fire department. And effectively, paraphrased, but if people aren't lazy, they'll go and look this up and kind of back it up. But during the last budget process, what the response was from the city leadership was, Well, we got dozens of people that make hundreds of thousands of dollars on the city, or $100,000 paychecks at least, six-digit salaries on the city in the city management. That we're not going to reduce their salaries to balance the budget because that'll have an impact on their lives. So we're going to target the $10 to $20 an hour employees that clean, maintain, protect and patrol our streets, and prevent and put out our fires. Those are the guys we're going to go after. But we're not going to target effectively the rich and famous of Killeen, our friends. We're going to go after all these other people who we don't really have to worry about. And we can use it as political, emotional, kind of poker chips. That's not how you run a city. That's not helping citizens as a whole. That's protecting a very, very elite class of people. And third, we kind of come into, from crime to business climate, it really comes down to the budget. It doesn't matter what your crime rate is. If your crime rate is minimal, if it's maxed out, if you can't balance your budget, if you go broke as a city, you're going to fail as a city. It doesn't matter how many businesses are here, whether you just have McDonald's and Walmart, or if you have Ford, Toyota, and UPS coming into the area. If you can't balance your budget, you're going to fail as a city. So budget is extremely, extremely important here. And again, back to, it's just a complicated checkbook. It's not the New York Stock Exchange. We're not trying to manipulate, for generations what, people's retirement investment accounts are going to look like. Money in and money out. And I think what it comes down to is empowering the city manager and giving him a very, very clear and concise idea of what we, as representatives on the council, are getting from the citizens on how we want the city to be run. And we give him a very, 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 very clear picture and very, very specific guidelines on how to achieve that. It will happen. I really think that and to kind of wrap that all up, if you go back to the crime thing, if we empower police officers, or you tell them that you don't have the option, you're going to write this person a ticket. They have a criminal past, you're going to write them a ticket. Ask the judges to do the same. You're going to create that climate, criminals are not going to want to be here. And if without spending more money, that will have not just a short-term but a long-term effect on the crime climate here in the city. Business climate, we got to reach out to them. But if we are not going to enforce those guidelines, the standards on the clean KEDC, Chambers of Commerce, heart attacks, if they're not going to go out there and do their jobs, we've got to spend that money in other places. We cannot continue to pad the bank accounts of retired generals, which is effectively what we're doing with these organizations, because they're not performing, they're not doing their jobs, and we're spending hundreds and effectively millions of dollars over the course of decades now that could have been used to attract and advertise and bring these people in the first place. And the third thing with the budget, we've got to have a balanced budget. We've got to not just have a balanced budget, but we have to start replacing some of our savings. We have to start saving for the future, because within the last 8 years, effectively, we've lost about 45% of our city's savings. Well, where did that go? Well, if business climate hasn't improved, if crime rates haven't improved, if all these things haven't improved, why have we spent more money than we should have? There's a lack of accountability there. And really, I think it comes down to is there's just a lot of personal relationships involved when you get into the city management versus the elected officials and the people that, the old families, that kind of, the good old boy system, as they say in a lot of places of Texas, that have not, they feel that they cannot be held accountable, or they can make excuses to not be held accountable. And we've got to go after them. We've got to set an example and say this, and for the sake of our communities and for people all across the city, especially because we're a veteran-based population, veterans are not a group of people that you take advantage of. And effectively, that's what's happening here in Killeen, Texas. They're being said, hey, you stay here, you pay us a good sum of your money, and we'll give you a minimal standard of living that, yeah, you got to put up with some crime, maybe a little less valued public education, but you'll move on, you'll be good. That's not what we should be telling these guys. This should be a wonderful example of a community, of an American community, of a Texas American community. If we can achieve that, or at least set the example for what we're going to do very well in the future. But crime, business climate, and budget. We achieve those three things, we're going to be fine. short term and to long term.
What would you do to attract new businesses or industries that would bring high-paying jobs to Killeen?
Well, if KEDC is not going to get off their butts and go do it, we need to form a task force. And I think that should include several elected officials. It should definitely include the city manager and a large portion of our retired veteran population in the area. We have incredible talent that is effectively sitting in their golden years that we could tap into and really use these guys to exploit those contacts and get out there and research. Hey, what businesses in California want to move to Texas? Darn near all of them. As time progresses, more and more will want to. Well, we need to be in their offices in California, not over social media, in California, grabbing them up and telling them all the advantages of Killeen, Texas, and the money that they'll save if they come here.